was an article called White Noise, Sound of Shores. There's this quote: "I want to argue here that the developments described above have created a noisy heritage, white noise, in which the coherence of messages is lost amid a torrent of voices and objects. Further, I will suggest that this new noisiness exacerbates the marginalization of certain groups in society, thus deferring engagement with key tensions and injustices in political life." And this is about when the British government, they created a archival program that was supposed to be democratic, to document the sounds of the British shoreline. And it was intended to be democratic. A lot of the sounds that were recorded in this project were sounds of the water, sounds of ice cream parlors, sounds of a lot of tourism sounds. But there was also sounds that were excluded. And the sounds that were excluded were right-wing protesters against migrants. They were talking about in this article how they're like, why did we get all these sounds of like tourism and this fantasy like image of our shores, when on our shores there was right-wing protest against migrants. On our shores there was actually migrants arriving, and we don't have the sound experiences of those documented in our archive. So how democratic is this really? It's not that democratic because of the institution. Basically, from my interpretation, the institution is connected with a certain people who support that institution or in communication with that institution, but a lot of marginalized communities are not connected, and so they didn't get the memo to record, or maybe didn't have the resources to record. If I'm on a boat arriving on the shore, like, how can I record this? So there was essentially, they're arguing a lot of white noise when it comes to building these sound archives that describe the experiences of people of the shores of Britain. I just wanted to bring this up because Solidarity Studios, in my opinion, is really the antithesis of that project because of the communities that we work with. We work with migrant communities. We work with indigenous communities. We work with these communities that are marginalized, and this is our core group of communities that we work with, because a lot of us were, and is that. And so I just think that this is important to note for the research that we're doing. And you'll see why I also mentioned this when it comes to sound environments. Let's talk about hip hop. Dr. Kalonji has written a few different articles and about the moral principles and behaviors of hip hop listeners. And two of the key moralities found in this research were that hip hop listeners value two moralities the most, which is authenticity and authority. Authenticity, and the way he did this research was he was going on Genius, looking at the most commonly used lyrics in hip hop on Genius, and then categorizing these lyrics to moral themes. Authority, for example, excuse my language, but one authority statement, for example, is "fuck the police," is one authority example. Now, do I believe that statement? I have my own family is police. I have some family members who are police, work in the Cook County Jail for 20 years. I also have some family members that are criminal. So it's in Chicago, I think it's a little. I don't exactly believe that. All I'm saying is that's an authority statement. But an authenticity statement is, for example, keep it real. And what his research basically found out is that these two are the main principles because hip hop is an art and culture and community originally about the preservation of your identity, to fight against the erasure of your identity. And these are the reasons why authenticity and authority are two of the main moral themes. And I think this is just important to put in the context of Solidarity Studios' work, because we use that as a framework with every single program that we run, whether it's in the forest, in the parks, at the North Park Nature Center, or, for example, in Ghana, recording and preserving music. The last thing I did want to talk about when it came to Dr. Kalonji is he came out to Ghana and he made this statement basically saying, we're not here just to preserve. Preserve means to also keep alive. And what hip hop does, it allows you to keep traditions and things alive through a simple act of sampling. Sampling is something that it's from hip hop culture, where you take a sound, you rework it, and put it into a new song. And so when we recorded Balogo music in Ghana, we didn't just record it to put it into archive. We ran a remix competition, sent it to production houses all across Ghana so that we can sample this music and continue the dialogue. And what was that dialogue? It was really about this genre of music that Kwame Nkrumah used in 1957 when he liberated Ghana from colonial control. He used it in his political campaigns when he became the first president of Ghana, and to unite Ghana as a nation. And so you can see, this is the dialogues that we are trying to have when it comes to sound. Cool. Going back to the point I just talked about, preservation, going back to white noise sound of shores, Lowly has conducted important work in Central African Republic, circulating records of the, I don't know how to say this, but Baeka music, in an attempt to share and revive knowledge of forgotten songs and practice. Benjamin has advanced the concept of sonic artifacts to the ruins of abandoned industrial sites. What is notable in both these cases, however, is that each derives its heritage value largely from engagement with antique materials. Each, nevertheless, takes as a starting point in framing sound as a heritage, the deployment of material traces of the past already separated out from everyday life. And so what hip hop keeps it alive, right? So going even back to Percy's program yesterday, sampling these Kenyan samples, like Ibrahim going to Kenya and like stumbling across this place and just distributing it to the masses is not enough to us. We got to think about how to engage with this music. All right, once we take listening seriously in the context of acoustic ecology and soundscape studies, we know that the personal is always implicated. Our responses to sounds and soundscapes are never objective, can never be converted into scientific data without the loss of subtle nuances that make each person's listening impressions unique. But let's at least be conscious that each one of us who presents work at this conference does so from a unique perspective that evolved from unique contexts, whether we choose to address this directly or not. And this article also talks really about how Hildegard, who was like 71 when he wrote this, was like producing soundscapes from recorded sounds to highlight his personal experience. Her, excuse me. Thank you. And we all come from unique perspectives. Solidarity Studios, this is our perspective that we come from when it comes to studying sound and engaging with sound. We work with migrant communities, environmental justice communities, the global south, urban communities, and indigenous communities. Here are my final thoughts when it comes to the research. Informal learning environments. I want to think about that. What I realized in our research is that a lot of the informal learning environments that we are researching and doing studies in are actually institutional. Environment is a place where we live, learn, eat, and sleep. And we learn everywhere. This is what I learned in my studies at Northwestern, being a learning scientist. Your kitchen, your backyard, your streets. And so it makes me think about institutional learning versus everyday learning. And when we're engaging in our research, what are we defining as an informal learning environment? Are there ways that we can expand that definition of informal learning environments? Because some of these articles, right, going on a walk in a forest, that was increasing opportunities for learning. We walk in front of our house most of the time, the majority of the time in our lives. So we go on walks with our parents as kids. Parents take their kids on walks from the car to their front door. What does that environment sound like? I know it's a lot harder to control, but it's a lot harder to control because it is embedded in a larger system than just a building. And so I just want to think about, how does our research think about learning in those environments and sound in those environments.